The FN 509 Midsize is a good competition for the ubiquitous Glock 19. Stick around, we'll talk about it. I want to welcome you to Riders Range. Thanks for joining us today while we take a look at the FN 509 Midsize 9mm pistol. FN started producing the 509 back in 2017. I think it was 2019 when they came out with the midsize version. There are currently, I think, 14 different 509s showing up on their website right now, anywhere from full size to tactical to midsize to compact, and also the LS Ledge competition model. You can get them with or without threaded barrels, and also optics ready. This particular 509 is the MDR model, comes equipped from the factory, set up for 10 different red dot sights. We'll talk more about that in just a couple of minutes. The gun comes with two different back straps, comes with this relatively nice carry case that'll fit the gun and two magazines in it. These are 15-round magazines, by the way, if you live in a place that values freedom. If you live in a place that doesn't value freedom, it comes with two 10-round magazines. This will also accommodate all of the other 509 mags that are longer, higher capacity, and you can get sleeves on the mags so that they do fit properly in the 509 midsize. This is, in a lot of ways, very similar to the Glock 19. We'll bring that out for comparison shortly. But this particular MDR model, as I mentioned, does come set up for red dot sights. This has a very interesting setup for the red dot mounts. Aaron Cowan at Sage Dynamics says this is the best red dot mounting system he's ever seen, and I certainly don't dispute that. Whereas a lot of pistols, you'll take the plate off and you'll have a different mounting plate for the different red dots that go on it. On the 509 series, they have different plates in the front to accommodate basically the alignment lugs on the sights, but the sights themselves will bolt right to the frame. Gives it one fewer points for the screws to come loose, and really it's a much more solid mounting system, plus they sit relatively low. These sights are also high enough to provide some degree of co-witness with any of those 10 different optics. I didn't put an optic on this. Again, it's a borrowed gun. I didn't even adjust the sights on it, and it was shooting just a little off. We'll see that in some of the footage there. And I did struggle just a little bit getting the kind of accuracy I wanted out of it, but that was, again, that's me getting used to the gun as opposed to the gun itself. A lot of good things to like about this gun, a lot of good comparisons with the Glock 19. It does have good aggressive cocking serrations front and rear. By the way, this gun is completely empty. There's nothing in the magazine, nothing in the chamber, and it is being used in a safe environment here. Cocking serrations for press checks in the front, to grip them in the rear. Nice, solid, aggressive, but not so aggressive they're going to tear your hands up. Does have somewhat of a carry melt on it, not quite as much as the Gen 5 Glock 19 does, but certainly more so than the Gen 4 and previous. Comes with a full 1913 rail on it, so it will take standard accessories, and they aren't proprietary. This gun is fully ambidextrous. Ambidextrous slide stop or slide release levers, whichever you want to call them. They're exactly the same on both sides. Some guns are different on the right side of the gun than they are on the left. Not so with the 509. There is an embossed or a protruding area around the slide stop lever on both sides, which makes it then less likely to inadvertently hold down on the slide stop lever with the high thumb position, or to push up on it for that matter. Nice touch on that. The magazine release, again, is exactly the same both right and left side. You don't have to change it over. It comes from the factory set up for right side or left side use. Good grip texture on it, and it's different texture on the front and back than it is from the sides, and also a different almost stippling up here where the strong side or your primary side thumb would rest, right or left hand shooter. There's no real index point for trigger finger or support side thumb on this, like you do on some others, but again, you can still get a good feel of where they're supposed to be. Let's see, the slide is tapered just a little bit at the top. It's certainly not a tri-cut by any means. Ridge on the top is kind of nice for aligning the sights, but that's about all it's good for. External extractor, no loaded chamber indicator on this. The barrel itself is just there. I don't know if you can see it there in the camera. There's just a very slight crown on the barrel, which you don't see on a lot of other pistols. Again, a nice touch. If you drop it, it's not going to affect the rifling. The takedown on this is very much like Smith & Wesson as opposed to the Glock style or some others. Real easy to field strip and easy to put back together. And again, just a different style than you see on some others, but I actually kind of like that as opposed to the Glock. The trigger on this is different in that it's a hinged trigger. The drop safety is a hinge, much like the earlier Smith & Wessons, Gen 1 and Gen 2 on the shield in particular. A lot of people don't like that. They prefer the trigger tab safety. By the way, we'll be bringing this Glock out quite a bit during this presentation here, so I'll show you that it is also empty. A lot of people prefer the tab style as opposed to the hinge style, and actually, I guess I'm kind of the weird one. I like the pivoting trigger better. Just personal preference. And while we're talking about trigger, the FN site says this is about a 5.5 to 7.5 pound pull. This one averages on my Wheeler electronic gauge, it comes out to about 5 pounds 10 ounces, fairly consistent. That's an average over 5 pulls. One little issue I've got with it, and again, we are empty, is there's just a little bit of a hitch. First of all, you overcome the internal safeties right there. Just a little bit of a hitch right there. It actually is kind of a false wall before it actually gets to the release, and there's no over travel on it. There's a good short reset, but again, just a little bit of a hitch before it finally breaks. But a nice trigger. It's, to me, it's more positive than a Glock trigger. There are better triggers on the market. Of course, I'm a 1911 guy, so I much prefer those. But for a pivoting trigger, this is pretty nice. And again, it comes out just under 6 pounds for this particular one, 5.5 to 7.5, depending on what model you get. The undercut on this is a little different also than the Glock. Go back to this Gen 4, and the undercut on the Glock trigger guard is fairly steep, and that I think this area right here is what results in what's called Glock knuckle for several people, where I've seen lots of reports on the internet about what they call Glock knuckle, where when they shoot it, the trigger guard's riding right on that knuckle. On the 509, it's a more gradual taper, and I put quite a few rounds through this thing and didn't have any discomfort at all. So I like the shape of this better than the Glock. Also, it doesn't have the squared off trigger guard on the front. Hardly anybody shoots, or at least people are generally not shooting with the old style with a finger on the front of the trigger guard, unless you're Jerry Mikulik or Lena Mikulik. So we talked about comparing with the Glock. This is a Gen 4. We also have a Gen 5 out here, just for general comparison. The length of the gun, both of these have 4-inch barrels, at least they say they're 4. I actually measured out at about 3.8. Depends on where you measure from. If you measure from the actual locking area in the back, it's 4 inches. If you measure from the actual end of the chamber, it's 3.8 roughly. But the guns are roughly the same length in the top, and they are roughly the same height. Now the 509 looks like it's a little longer, but that's because the back strap actually protrudes down to cover the back of the magazine, where it doesn't with the Glock. But when the magazines are inserted, these two pistols are both about the same actual height. The nice thing about the Glock, again, and I carried a Glock for the final 24 years of my law enforcement career, but I'm still not a huge Glock fan, even though I had to carry one, and they worked. But the nice thing about the Glock not having that the backstrap extend down over the back of the magazine, it's easier to get a hold of the magazine and pull it out if you ever have to manually pull it out rather than just let gravity do its work. On the 509, there's a slight indentation on each side of the grip. that allows you to grip the magazine. So theoretically, you can grip it with thumb, middle finger, and index finger on the lip of the magazine and strip it out. But to me, it's not quite as solid a grip to get on it. If the magazine gets a little stuck because of a double feed or something, it may make it just a little bit harder to get out. Anyway, they're the same height. Where the difference comes in is in the width. Now, I know a lot of measurements on width of guns take into consideration all of the controls. What's the maximum width of a box it'll fit in? That area is so irrelevant to carrying it concealed or carrying it in general. I frankly don't care about that. I care about the width of the slide, the width of the grip, and there is a slight difference. The difference in slide width is less than 1/10 of an inch. The difference in grip width between the FN 509 and the Glock is about 5/100ths of an inch. So just a hair narrower on the Glock than it is on the FN 509. One of the big differences, though, is in weight. The Glock, loaded with 15 rounds in the magazine plus one more for the chamber, 124 grain ammunition, comes in at 31 ounces even. The FN 509 midsize, same ammunition, comes in at 33.2 ounces, so a little more than 2 ounces heavier for the same size gun. But again, it's the Glock is what's generally used for the comparison to the 509. If you look at the back also, it appears as though the bore axis is just a little bit higher on the 509 when you look at it in relationship to the beaver tail. I didn't find that to be any kind of a hindrance in shooting it. One gun that some may also compare it to would be the HK VP9. Now this is the tactical model as opposed to the regular, and these now come in 17 round, just a hair taller for the VP9, just a hair longer for the VP9, but it's also a little bit narrower. So again, it's another possible comparison, but the Glock 19 is the ubiquitous comparison for so many guns these days. Probably the biggest difference between, well, there are a lot of differences obviously, but the biggest difference between the FN 509 and the Glock 19, even if you get the Glock 19 MOS Gen 5, is going to be in the price. There is just shy of $200 difference with the FN 509 having an MSRP of just under $800, whereas the Glock 19 MOS is going to be a little over $600. So that may be a big deciding factor for a lot of people. But the question is, how well does this shoot? Does it outshoot a 19? Well, I didn't put it side by side with a 19, but I did shoot it a fair amount. Again, this is a borrowed gun. I didn't mess with the sights at all, so took a little getting used to it. I struggled a little bit initially at 12 yards on the plates. And again, that's me, not the gun. I didn't spend as much time with this as I would have if it was my own gun. 25 yards, again, I struggled a little bit, and I had some trouble with the 8-inch plates at 25. And again, it's just a matter of getting used to the gun, getting used to where these sights work. If it was mine, I would nudge that rear sight just a little bit to the right to bring my pattern just a little bit to the right. Of course, if it was mine, I'd probably put a red dot on it. And you can see at 50 yards it was shooting to the left, and I did struggle a little bit more with this, but again, it's no reflection on the gun. That's just a reflection on my time with this particular gun. So the 509 is certainly a direct competitor to the Glock 19. A little bit more money, has some nicer features on it, fully ambidextrous as opposed to partially. The MOS version on the Glock does require or involve a mounting plate. You got to change the sights on it, whereas the 509 comes all set up with it, with sights and the plates, and which is going to make probably a closer price point difference, because by the time you change the sights on a Glock 19 MOS, you're going to add depending on the sights you put on it. Now these are just plain black post and notch, which by the way I really like. In fact, if you show the contrast there, I like the contrast between the front and rear black, which is really good for co-witness sights. But by the time you put the sights on a Glock 19 to co-witness with a red dot, you're going to be pushing $700 anyway, which is going to bring that price point a little bit closer. So overall, 509 is nice. I got to give it back because I just borrowed it. But would I take this over the Glock 19? You know, I really have to think about it. That optics mounting system I love. The grip texture I like much better than the Glock Gen 4 or Gen 5. The fully ambidextrous controls are nice. The way the trigger guard is shaped is nice. The hinge trigger I like. So there's a lot to like about the 509 midsize. So that's just a quick, well, hopefully a quick look at the FN 509 midsize. And to me, it is, as long as you don't mind the additional price, it is a viable competitor to the Glock 19. Thanks so much for dropping into Rider's Range.